Have you ever found yourself emotionally pulled towards someone who isn't your partner and known in the same breath that the easy story you could tell yourself about it isn't the real story, and the easy story your partner would tell you about it isn't the real story either? We've all felt misunderstood in a relationship, and anyone who has carried this particular kind of weight knows that the standard advice, the just end it advice, the just confess everything advice, the you're a bad person advice almost never describes the actual situation you're in. That's why this channel exists. At the Relationship Blueprint, we work with the experiences most people are too ashamed to discuss honestly. Today, we're doing something specific. We're going to read an emotional affair the way it deserves to be read. Not as a moral failure and not as destiny, but as a message your relationship is trying to deliver to you. And almost nobody knows how to read it. 6 specific messages an emotional affair is almost always trying to tell you. Message number 4 in particular is the one that almost nobody understands, because it sounds at first like the opposite of what it actually means. It's the message most likely to determine whether your relationship survives, transforms, or ends. I'll get to it at minute 9. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what message your situation is delivering, the specific conversation underneath it, and the next step that addresses what's actually happening, rather than what you've been telling yourself is happening, starting today. Welcome back to the Relationship Blueprint. Subscribe if you're new video every week. Today's video is a sequel to last week's. If you haven't watched the 7 hidden reasons for emotional attachment yet, you can come back to this after, but you don't have to. This one stands on its own. Before we get to the 6 messages, one foundational reframe that the rest of the video depends on. Without it, none of what follows will land properly. With it, everything will. An emotional affair is not primarily an event. It is a message. It is information delivered by your nervous system through the specific person who happens to be available about what is missing, hurting, shifting, or breaking inside your primary relationship. The person you've become attached to is the envelope. The message is what's inside it. And almost everyone, when they find themselves inside this experience, focuses on the envelope and never opens it. Important reframe. If you treat the third party as the cause, you will spend years trying to manage your feelings toward a specific person while the underlying message goes undelivered. If you treat them as the message, you can finally read what your relationship has been trying to tell you. The message is uncomfortable. It is also the most useful piece of information your relationship has produced in years. Esther Perel, in her book, The State of Affairs, frames it this way. Every affair is a window into the unlived life of the person having it, what they've been missing, what they've never spoken aloud, what part of themselves has been waiting to be addressed. The emotional affair specifically, without the sexual layer that complicates the conversation, offers an unusually clear view of that window. There's no body to distract from the message. There's only attention, only connection, only what the body has been hungry for. And what the body has been hungry for is data. This is also the work of Sue Johnson, John Gottman, and Shirley Glass, whose research on emotional affairs across decades produced a similar conclusion. Beneath every emotional affair sits one of a small number of recurring messages. The same patterns repeat across thousands of couples, across decades of research, across cultures. The variations are personal. The underlying messages are not. Today, we're going to read those messages, all 6. And then I'm going to give you the next move. the one that takes the message and turns it into something your relationship can actually use. The emotional affair is not what your relationship is. It is what your relationship has been trying to say. The work is not to silence the message. The work is to listen to what it's been telling you all along. Stay until message 4. The one I told you is most often misread. It sounds at first like the opposite of what it actually means. Many couples get this one exactly backwards and destroy a relationship that didn't need to be destroyed. I'll show you how to read it correctly at minute 9. Message 1 of 6. You stopped being a person in your relationship. The message about identity. The signal. The other person doesn't see you as a parent, a spouse, or a partner. They see you as a person, with opinions, with humor, with interior life. When you're with them, you remember a version of yourself you had almost forgotten existed. Your partner used to see this version. Somewhere, without anyone deciding it, that stopped. What it's telling you: your relationship has reduced you to the functions you perform inside it. Parent, earner, household manager, caretaker. The connection between your partner and you as a person has thinned to almost nothing. The third party is registering a vitality your partner has stopped seeing because they've stopped looking. The affair is your nervous system protesting against having been turned into a role. The research, Esther Perel calls this the identity affair, the most documented type of emotional affair in long-term partnerships. The pattern is so consistent across her research that she identifies it as the leading signal of role reduction within a marriage. The third party isn't replacing the spouse. They're witnessing a self the spouse has forgotten to witness. Here is the conversation to have. Tell your partner directly, I think you've been seeing me as a role, and I've been performing that role. I want you to see me as a person again. Here is the version of me you might have forgotten was here. Say what version. Be specific. The conversation will be uncomfortable. It is also the conversation that, more than any other, predicts whether the relationship can be remade rather than abandoned. Message 2 of 6. You've been holding something back for years. The message about unsaid truth. The signal. With the other person, you find yourself saying things you have never said to your partner. Old grief, unspoken disappointment, the career you didn't pursue, the fear you've been carrying, the version of your life you imagined that didn't happen. The conversations feel deeper because they are deeper. You've been holding entire inner territories outside the marriage for so long that you forgot they were there. What it's telling you: there is a version of yourself, a layer of your interior life that has never made it across the threshold of your marriage. Either because the marriage never had space for it, or because you never invited your partner into it, or because the conditions for that kind of disclosure haven't been created. The third party is meeting a self that, in your primary relationship, doesn't exist. The research. Shirley Glass, in her landmark research on emotional affairs, identified this as one of the most consistent findings. The affair is structured around what the person has not been able to tell their spouse, accumulated across years. The disclosure that happens with the third party is, often, the disclosure that should have been happening at home all along. The intimacy isn't about romance, it's about being known. Here is the conversation to have. Identify what you have not been telling your partner, specifically, not vague feelings, specific things, then tell them. The conversation will not be a single conversation. It will be a series of slow, careful disclosures over weeks or months. Many couples who have been together for decades discover, through this practice, that they don't actually know each other's interior lives at all. the discovery is painful, it is also the foundation of every long-term relationship that survives this kind of moment. Message 3 of 6. Your relationship has stopped being a place where you grow. The message about stagnation. The signal. The other person is associated with movement, with ideas, with possibility, with the version of you that is still becoming. Your relationship, by contrast, has become a place of repetition, comfortable, familiar, deeply known, but no longer producing growth. You don't become a new person inside your marriage anymore. The affair is associated with becoming. What it's telling you: your relationship has shifted from being a context for development to being a context for maintenance. Both contexts are real and necessary. But a relationship that has only the second one becomes a quiet kind of cage. The affair is delivering the message that you have stopped being someone who is still in motion inside the relationship that is meant to hold your life. The hunger isn't for the other person. The hunger is for momentum. The research. Robert Keegan's work on adult development describes long-term relationships as one of two things: a holding environment for continued growth, or a fixed structure that resists it. Couples who maintain the first quality across decades report consistently higher satisfaction and dramatically lower rates of infidelity. The affair is, often, the body's protest against being held in a structure that has stopped allowing the person inside it to keep developing. Here is the conversation to have. Ask your partner, where in our life together am I still becoming? Where are you still becoming? Where have we stopped? The questions are uncomfortable. They are also the questions most long-term couples have never asked each other. The work of restoring development to a relationship is real work, but it begins with the willingness to acknowledge that the development stopped. Message 4 of 6. Your relationship is healthy enough to survive this. The message most people read backwards. Message 4. The one I told you almost nobody reads correctly. Pay close attention here, because this is the message that, when misread, destroys more relationships than the affair itself. The signal. You found yourself emotionally pulled towards someone else, and the experience produced an unexpected reaction inside you. You started thinking about your relationship more, not less. You started having clearer thoughts about what you wanted, what was missing, what you had been avoiding. Far from making you certain your relationship is doomed, the emotional affair has produced an unfamiliar clarity about it, and that clarity surprises you. What it's telling you: this is the message most people read exactly backwards. The signal is not that your relationship is over. The signal is that your relationship is healthy enough, durable enough, real enough, deep enough, that it can produce a crisis without immediately shattering. Weak relationships break before they can produce a clarifying event. Strong relationships absorb the disruption and use it. The affair didn't reveal that your marriage is broken. It revealed that your marriage is strong enough to be honest. Here is why almost nobody reads this correctly. When you find yourself in this situation, the immediate cultural script tells you that the affair is proof of fundamental incompatibility. That if the marriage were truly good, this couldn't happen. That the pull towards someone else is evidence that the relationship has failed. None of that is supported by the research. The opposite is closer to the truth. Relationships that have the structural integrity to survive an emotional crisis are often relationships that emerge stronger on the other side of it. Not despite the crisis, but because of what the crisis forced into the open. Esther Perel, in her work with thousands of couples, describes this as the second marriage inside the same marriage. The the relationship that emerges after an emotional affair has been read correctly and addressed. The first marriage was the one that had been quietly losing structure for years. The second marriage is the one that gets built when both people finally get honest. That second marriage is often more genuinely intimate, more honest, and more durable than the first one ever was. The crisis is the price of admission to it. The research. Shirley Glass's landmark research on couples who survive emotional affairs identified the same finding. Couples who treat the affair as a message and address what it's pointing to are dramatically more likely to report higher satisfaction 5 and 10 years later than couples who never experienced the crisis at all. Not because the crisis was good, but because the work that follows the crisis, when done correctly, produces a deeper relationship than passive continuation would have. Here is the diagnostic that tells you whether your relationship is in this category. Ask yourself, when you imagine telling your partner about what you've been feeling, not the details, just the existence of the experience, do you imagine them being able to hear it eventually, after the initial pain? Do you imagine them wanting to understand rather than wanting to destroy? Do you imagine the relationship being able to hold this kind of weight if you both committed to addressing it? If the honest answer is yes, even if it's a frightened yes, then the message is the one I just named. Your relationship is healthy enough to survive this. The work now is to give it the chance to. Here is the conversation to have. This is the conversation almost nobody has. The one where you tell your partner, something is happening inside me. I don't want to destroy us with it. I want us to use it. Will you sit with me and let me tell you what I'm discovering about our relationship that I think we both need to know? The conversation is terrifying. It is also the one that produces the second marriage. Most couples never have it. The ones who do often discover something neither of them knew was possible. The emotional affair is not the failure of your relationship. It is often, when read correctly, the proof that your relationship is strong enough to bear honesty. The work is to read it that way before the misreading does the damage the affair itself never would have done. Message 5 of 6. Something has been hurting for longer than you realized. The message about accumulated injury. The signal. Now that you've found yourself in this experience, you can see, for the first time, how long something has been quietly hurting in your relationship. The small dismissals, the repeated unmet bids for connection, the moments you stopped bringing things up because you knew they wouldn't land. The accumulation has been so gradual, you didn't register it. Until now. What it's telling you, your relationship has been carrying an injury that has been building for years. The injury is not catastrophic. It has just been continuous, and the affair has functioned as the moment of recognition that lets you finally see what has been silently accumulating. The other person didn't cause the visibility. They simply created the conditions in which the long invisible pain became impossible to keep not seeing. The research. John Gottman's decades of research on what predicts divorce identifies this exact pattern. Couples who divorce after 20 years are usually not couples whose relationships broke suddenly. They are couples whose relationships had been quietly losing emotional safety for so long that one or both partners had stopped noticing the loss. The affair, when it happens, often functions as the moment the accumulated injury finally becomes visible. The injury was already there. The visibility is new. Here is the conversation to have. This conversation is harder than the previous ones. It requires saying to your partner, something has been hurting in our relationship for longer than I realized. I want to tell you what I now see, and I want us to repair it, not assign blame, repair. The willingness to skip blame and move straight to repair is the entire skill. Couples who can do it usually survive. Couples who get stuck in blame usually don't. Message 6 of 6. You need to learn how to be honest with yourself first. The message about the inner conversation. The signal. Underneath the attachment to this other person is a recognition you have been avoiding inside yourself about who you have been pretending to be, about what you have been not letting yourself want, about what truth about your own life you have not been willing to face. The affair is not primarily about the relationship. It is about something inside you that has been waiting to be admitted. What it's telling you. Before any conversation can happen with your partner, a more fundamental conversation has to happen inside you about what you actually want from your life, about what version of yourself you have been suppressing, about what you have been hiding from yourself. The affair has functioned as a forcing mechanism for an internal honesty that nothing else in your life has been forcing. The third party is not the destination. The internal honesty is. The research. Esther Perel and Bessel van der Kolk both write about this dimension of affairs, the way they often function as a recognition event for the person having them, before they function as anything in the relationship itself. The affair forces a kind of internal disclosure that ordinary life rarely demands. The person realizes what they want, what they have been avoiding, who they actually are, often for the first time in decades. Here is the conversation to have. Before talking to your partner, talk to yourself. Honestly, in writing if possible. What do I actually want from my life? What have I been pretending I don't want? What truth have I been refusing to admit to myself? The conversation with your partner, when it comes, will be dramatically better if you have done this internal work first. Couples therapists report that the partners who do this internal work before bringing the conversation home are usually the ones whose relationships survive. The ones who don't usually aren't. 6 messages. And underneath all of them, one practical instruction for what to do with them. Don't act on the affair. Read the affair. Then act on what you read. Most people, in the position you might be in, try to make decisions about the affair before they have understood the message. They confess, they end it, they amplify it, they hide it. Any of these is an action taken before reading. The action almost always makes things worse, because the action is responding to the envelope rather than to what's inside it. Here is the alternative. 4 moves, in this order. 1. Identify which of the 6 messages is the dominant one. It can be more than one. Most people will recognize themselves in 2 or 3. The dominant message tells you what your relationship has actually been trying to say. 2. Read the message to yourself first, in writing, by yourself, without rushing to action. The reading itself is the practice. Most of the work of this moment happens in the act of finally letting the message land internally, before any of it has to become external. 3. Decide what kind of conversation the message points to. Each of the 6 messages has a different conversation underneath it. Identity, unsaid truth, stagnation, durability, accumulated injury, internal honesty. The conversation you need to have with your partner depends on which message is dominant. Different messages, different conversations. 4. Have that conversation slowly, in stages, not in one explosive evening, over weeks, with patience, often with the help of a couples therapist who knows how to hold the kind of weight these conversations carry. The work is the conversation. The conversation is the work. An emotional affair is one of the most clarifying events a long-term relationship can produce when it is read correctly. Most are not read correctly. The ones that are usually produce, on the other side, a more honest, more deliberate, more durable version of the relationship than the original ever was. The crisis is not the failure. The misreading is. If you've made it this far, and you've recognized your relationship in any of these 6 messages, I want you to know one last thing before you go. The fact that you watched this whole video, the fact that you're willing to read what your relationship has been trying to say, the fact that you're here with me on a last page of an unsealed envelope that says something about who you are. You're not running from this experience. You're trying to understand it. That is the entire difference between the people who emerge from this kind of moment with a deeper relationship and the people who emerge from it with regret. Here is what I most want you to do next. The 6 messages we covered today all point to a deeper layer underneath. The structural patterns in your primary relationship that have shaped how it's evolved, what's missing in it, and what each of you actually needs to feel loved inside it. Those patterns have a name. They're called your love languages. And the conversations underneath the conversations, the ones that prevent emotional affairs from emerging in the first place, almost always begin there. If you want to do the work that addresses what we covered today, the Love Languages video is the most direct next step. It gives you the vocabulary that the conversation you've been avoiding has been waiting for. Watch it next. It's the conversation underneath today's conversation. Subscribe to the Relationship Blueprint, new video every week. What you're experiencing is not a verdict. It is a letter. Read it slowly. Read it honestly. The relationship you build on the other side of that reading is often a more durable one than the one you would have had if the letter had never arrived. I'll see you in the next one.